The wedding that shouldn't have happened. The grand hall shimmered with elegance, white roses lined the aisle, soft golden lights flickered like stars, and the quiet hum of anticipation filled the air. Guests whispered among themselves, dressed in their finest, waiting for a moment that was supposed to unite two lives forever. But something felt wrong. At the front stood a tall, well-dressed man in a gray suit, his posture straight, his jaw tight. He looked calm on the outside, but his eyes betrayed him. There was tension there, like a storm waiting to break. Then came the interruption. An older man stepped forward, his polished shoes echoing loudly against the marble floor. His silver hair and stern face commanded attention instantly. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and pointed directly at the groom, his finger trembling, not with weakness but with anger. "You don't deserve this," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Behind him stood two women. One wore a deep blue dress, her expression serious and unreadable. The other, in soft pink, looked pale, her eyes fixed on the groom as if she were seeing a ghost from her past. The bride, standing near the altar in her white gown, froze. Her bouquet slipped slightly in her grip as confusion and fear crept across her face. What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The groom didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared at the older man, his expression darkening. "This is not the place," he said firmly. "You need to leave." "No," the older man replied sharply. "This is exactly the place. She deserves to know the truth before it's too late." The room grew colder. The woman in pink took a small step forward, her hands trembling. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said softly, her voice breaking. "But you left me no choice." The bride turned toward her, confusion turning into suspicion. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking now. The groom clenched his fists. "Don't listen to them. They're trying to ruin this." "Ruin this?" The older man interrupted, his voice rising. "You ruined lives long before today." The guests began murmuring louder now, some standing, others craning their necks to catch every word. The once perfect ceremony was unraveling before their eyes. The woman in blue finally spoke, her tone calm but firm. "You lied to everyone here," she said, looking directly at the groom. "But lies don't stay buried forever." The groom's composure began to crack. A flicker of panic crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with anger. "This is absurd," he snapped. "You have no proof." The woman in pink reached into her clutch, her hands shaking as she pulled out a small envelope. She held it tightly, as if it carried the weight of everything she had suffered. "I wish I didn't," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "But I do." The bride's heart pounded in her chest. She looked between them, her mind racing, her world tilting. Just moments ago, she was about to say, "I do." Now, she wasn't even sure who the man in front of her really was. "Show me," she said finally, her voice trembling but determined. The groom stepped forward quickly. "No," he said, his tone urgent. "You don't need to see anything. This is all a misunderstanding." But the older man moved between them, blocking his path. "Enough," he said coldly. "Let the truth speak for itself." The hall fell silent again. All eyes were on the envelope. And as the woman in pink slowly began to open it, one thing became clear. This wedding was no longer about love. It was about secrets. And some secrets were about to destroy everything. The truth unveiled. The sound of the envelope tearing open echoed louder than it should have. In that moment, it felt as if time itself had slowed, every breath in the hall held captive by anticipation. The woman in pink pulled out a stack of photographs and a folded document. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady now, determined, as if she had crossed a point of no return. "I never wanted to stand here," she said quietly, looking at the bride. "But you deserve to know who you're about to marry." The groom stepped forward again, his voice sharp. "Don't do this," he warned. "You're making a mistake." "No," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "The mistake was trusting you." She handed the photographs to the bride. At first, the bride hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the glossy images as if touching them would make everything real. Slowly, she took them. Her eyes scanned the first photo, and her face drained of color. It was the groom. But he wasn't alone. He stood beside the woman in pink, his arm wrapped around her, both of them smiling. It looked intimate, personal. Not something you could easily explain away. The bride flipped to the next photo. Another image. Another moment. This time, they were closer, laughing, unaware of the camera. A date. A relationship. Her breathing became uneven. What is this? She whispered. The groom shook his head quickly. Old pictures. They don't mean anything. Don't lie. The woman in blue snapped, stepping forward. Tell her the whole truth. The bride looked up, her eyes now filled with hurt. Were you with her? She asked, her voice trembling. The groom hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any words ever could. Yes, the woman in pink answered instead, tears slipping down her cheeks. We were together. For 2 years. A ripple of shock spread across the room. But that's not the worst part, the older man said, his voice heavy with anger. Show her the document. The bride unfolded the paper slowly, her hands shaking more now. Her eyes moved across the page, and then suddenly stopped. Her heart skipped. It was a legal document. A marriage certificate. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. No, she breathed. The groom's face hardened. That's not valid anymore, he said quickly. We were separated. You were still married when you proposed to her. The woman in pink cried out, her voice breaking completely now. You promised me you'd fix things. You promised you wouldn't leave me like this. The bride staggered back slightly, as if the ground beneath her had shifted. You're married, she said, her voice hollow. It's complicated, the groom tried to explain, stepping closer. I was going to tell you. When? She snapped suddenly, her voice rising for the first time. After the wedding. After I found out myself. Silence. The answer was clear. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of everyone. You lied to me, she said, her voice quieter now, but filled with something deeper than anger, betrayal. I love you, the groom insisted desperately. That's what matters. I was going to fix everything, I swear. Love. The older man scoffed. Love doesn't begin with deception. The guests were no longer whispering. They were openly watching now, some in shock, others in disbelief. What was meant to be a beautiful union had turned into a public unraveling of truth. The woman in blue placed a gentle hand on the bride's arm. You don't have to go through with this, she said softly. The bride stared at the man she thought she knew, the man she was seconds away from marrying. Now, he felt like a stranger. Is there anything else? She asked quietly, her voice almost too calm. The woman in pink hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, she said. And in that moment, the groom's expression shifted completely, from defensive, to afraid. Because whatever came next was worse than everything before. The breaking point. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Every eye in the hall was fixed on the woman in pink. Even the faint music that had been playing earlier seemed like a distant memory now. The world had narrowed down to one moment, one truth waiting to be spoken. The bride stood still, her fingers gripping the edges of the photographs and the document. Her knuckles had turned white, but her face had changed. The shock was still there, but something stronger was rising beneath it. Say it, she whispered. The woman in pink took a shaky breath. For a moment, it looked like she might break again, but instead, she straightened her shoulders, as if gathering the last pieces of her courage. I'm pregnant. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. A collective gasp erupted from the guests. Someone dropped a glass in the back, the sound shattering the silence into even smaller pieces. The bride blinked, once, twice, as if her mind refused to process what she had just heard. No, the groom said immediately, his voice sharp, almost panicked. That's not. It's yours, the woman in pink said firmly, cutting him off. Her tears were falling freely now, but her voice did not waver. You know it is. The groom ran a hand through his hair, his composure completely gone now. This is insane, he muttered. You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to trap me. Trap you. The older man stepped forward again, fury burning in his eyes. You trapped her. You lied, you manipulated, and now you want to run away from your own responsibility. The bride's breathing became shallow. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as the weight of everything crashed down on her all at once, the lies, the marriage, and now, this. She looked at the groom again. This time, she wasn't searching for answers. She was searching for honesty. Is it true? She asked, her voice barely holding together. The groom hesitated. That was all it took. Her eyes closed for a brief second, and when they opened again, something inside her had shifted. The softness, the love, the trust, it was all gone. Replaced by clarity. You were building a future with me, she said slowly, each word precise, while destroying someone else's. It's not like that, he insisted, stepping closer again. I was going to fix it. I just needed time. You had time, she interrupted, her voice suddenly strong. You had every chance to tell me the truth. The woman in blue spoke again, her tone steady but filled with quiet anger. People like you don't tell the truth, she said. They wait until they're caught. The groom turned toward her, frustration boiling over. You don't understand anything about this. No, she replied calmly. But I understand enough. The bride took a step back, creating distance between herself and the man she once loved. That small step felt bigger than anything else. It was the moment everything truly ended. The guests watched in stunned silence as the reality of the situation settled in. This wasn't just a broken wedding. It was a complete collapse. The woman in pink wiped her tears, her voice softer now as she looked at the bride. I didn't come here to hurt you, she said. I came because I didn't want you to live the same lie I did. For a moment, their eyes met, two women, both hurt by the same man, standing on opposite sides of the same truth. The bride nodded slowly. Thank you, she said quietly. The groom's face fell. Wait, what? He said, confused. You're thanking her. She looked at him one last time. I almost married a stranger, she said. She saved me from that. Those words hit harder than anything else. For the first time, he had nothing to say. No excuses. No arguments. Nothing. The bride took a deep breath, steadying herself. Then, with trembling hands but unwavering resolve, she reached up and removed her veil. The soft fabric slipped through her fingers as she let it fall. A symbol of everything that was supposed to happen. Gone. This wedding is over, she said. And just like that, everything changed forever. A new beginning. The veil lay on the floor like a silent witness to everything that had just unfolded. For a moment, no one moved. The bride stood tall, her white dress still glowing under the soft lights, but now it no longer symbolized a beginning, it marked an ending. Not just of a wedding, but of a lie she had almost built her life upon. The groom looked around desperately, as if searching for someone, anyone, who would defend him. But all he found were faces filled with disappointment, judgment, and silence. This isn't over, he said weakly, his voice lacking the confidence it once carried. We can fix this, we can talk about it. There's nothing left to fix, the bride replied calmly. Her voice had changed. It was no longer trembling or uncertain. It was steady, strong in a way that surprised even her. You didn't just lie, she continued. You built everything on lies. And love can't grow where truth doesn't exist. The older man nodded slightly, his anger finally easing. The storm inside him had passed, replaced by a quiet sense of justice. The truth had come out, and that was all he had wanted. The woman in pink stood quietly, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Her tears had slowed, but the pain in her eyes remained. Still, there was something else now too, relief. The woman in blue stepped closer to her, offering silent support. The bride turned toward the woman in pink and walked over slowly. The guests watched closely, unsure of what would happen next. For a brief moment, they simply stood face to face. I'm sorry, the bride said gently. The woman in pink looked surprised. Sorry. For what? For what he put you through, the bride replied. And for almost becoming part of the same lie. Tears filled the woman's eyes again, but this time they weren't just from pain, they carried gratitude. Thank you for listening, she whispered. The bride gave a small nod. Then, without another word, she turned back toward the aisle, the same path she was supposed to walk moments ago, but under entirely different circumstances. This time, she walked alone. Each step was slow, but powerful. Not a step toward marriage, but a step toward freedom. The room remained silent as she passed through the guests. No music played, no celebrations followed. But there was something far more important in the air now, respect. Because walking away takes more courage than staying in a lie. Behind her, the groom stood frozen, watching everything slip through his fingers. The perfect life he had tried to construct was gone, shattered by the very truth he tried to hide. The older man placed a firm hand on his shoulder. This is the cost of deception, he said quietly. The groom didn't respond, because deep down, he knew it was true. Outside, the doors opened, and the bride stepped into the daylight. The cool air touched her face, and for the first time since the ceremony began, she could breathe. Really breathe. Her life hadn't ended here. It had just been saved. She looked up at the sky, letting the sunlight wash over her, and a small, genuine smile formed on her lips, not out of happiness but out of strength. Because sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most powerful beginnings. Moral of the story: truth may hurt in the moment, but lies destroy lives in the long run. It takes courage to walk away from deception, but choosing honesty will always lead you to a stronger, freer future.